Hi all. So now let's do a couple examples using one sample t-test instead of a one sample z-test, which we only will use StatCrunch and not by hand for these examples. So for this first example, we have a sample of 30 adults who are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder with a mean of 129 Facebook friends, with a standard deviation of 41. And we want to test whether their mean exceeds the national average of 120 Facebook friends using a zero point zero 0.01 significance level. And we know this is a t-test since the standard deviation comes from the sample, in which I have provided a slide with some hints of how to determine if the standard deviation comes from the sample. So let's go to StatCrunch. So using, again, the same procedures, we go to stat, t-stats, one sample, and then with summary. Our sample mean is 129, and our sample standard deviation is 41, and our sample size in this example is 30. And we want to know if it exceeds the national average, which is 120. So that's greater than. So in this case, we want 120 here. That's the null. And then greater than. Mu is greater than 120. So we hit compute. And this is, we are given our null and alternative hypotheses. And then here's our statistic and our p-value. So let's copy that. Go to example, and we paste. So here's our output. And we conclude then, we reject H naught if P is greater, the p-value is less than 0.01. So for this example, our p-value is 0.1195. So we fail to reject H naught since the p-value is greater than 0.01. And we conclude that there is not sufficient evidence to conclude that mu is greater than 120. So for this problem, we can't determine that our sample, whether adults with narcissistic personality disorders have more Facebook friends than the average, the national average. So that's the first example. So for the second example, we are given the data in this example, but it relates to oral surgeons keeping track of the ages at which his patients were having their wisdom teeth removed. So here's our data, like I said, and we want to test whether the population mean mu differs from 20. And in this case, we're not given the significance level. So when you're not given the significance level, just assume it's 0.05. So let's go to StatCrunch, or let's copy this first. Copy the data, go to StatCrunch, we paste the data, and then we go to stat, and this is a t-test. Since we're not given the population standard deviation, we can use the t-test because it comes from the sample then. So one sample with data this time. So we drag our variable 1, and for this, our hypotheses is, our alternative will be if it differs from the if it differs from 20. So we have 20, mu equals 20 for our null hypothesis, and then our alternative is if it differs. So that's not equals to 20. It's the same thing. So we push compute. And here we're given, again, our hypotheses, and then our test statistic and our p-value. Copy that. Go over to our question, paste that. And so we reject H naught if p-value is less than 0.05, like I said. And in this, for this example, we see that our p-value is 0.03, so we can reject H naught. There is sufficient evidence to conclude that the population mean differs from 20. And we can see that because also from the sample mean is provided for you, and that's about 25. So this, the fact that we reject H naught and say that the population mean differs from the sample, then that makes sense here. So, and that's it.